Hey all, welcome. And you might even be able to hear a tuba out back. America the Beautiful. Um, Maybe you can hear it, but everyone's in the neighborhood starting to do their screaming and clapping out the windows. So if you pick up any noise and or the sound of a tuba, that's what's going out behind the building right now. Welcome. And let's see if we can fire up chat here. And if you can hear me, and here it is. Now pick up reflections. Okay. Justin, thank you for joining us. Andrew, hello. David Quillen, happy Easter to you too. Thank you. Sorry for touching the microphone there. Oh, I've only got like a 5-second delay to the live. And we can, yeah, that's okay there. Fog Dog, welcome. Rick Crawford, happy Easter to you too. Thanks for joining us. Give everyone a minute or so to come in. Someone else was, they must have put the speakers up at the window. They're blasting out New York, New York. Sinatra's New York, New York. Ooh, 3 nights in a row, 2 nights or something. And so that was kind of fun. Everyone was screaming and yelling and singing that out the back. It's too bad. I face out back, sort of the courtyards behind the buildings, the gardens and courtyards behind the buildings. That's the direction I face. Out that way is out front to the street. So all the yelling and hooping, hollering we do out the back, there are a couple of professionals, healthcare professionals and people who would hear that, but I like it when it goes out into the street. But actually, it just occurred to me there's a retirement home up the block, so everybody working there and would certainly be able to hear it. So I think there's some good benefit to there. Crimson, hello, thanks for joining us. Alex Davila, welcome. Yeah, now that you're here, we can start the show. Nobody Vapes, welcome. What's up, bro? Florida Vapes, hello, good evening. Manther Kanan. Not taking any questions yet, but for anyone with questions, battery space mooch in front, so I get a nice big bright red tag, and I'll get to your questions. Just going to say hello for a minute or two, dive into some questions, then take a show. Dive into tonight's topic. Dave Flowers, Ross Hamilton, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Stuart. Yeah, I had the Goon 1.5 again on a Minikin and V2, but just before the show, busy bouncing around. Oh, there goes New York, New York. Um, got a fairly decent dry hit on it. So yeah, cotton gets changed in this. So I may not be vaping tonight, but I was doing uh, some of that homemade friend of mine's pineapple peach, and that was I was perfect mood for it today. Don't know why, perfect mood for it. So it was absolutely awesome. So I did for me a lot, about 10 milliliters, which probably meant I would have done 15 or 20 for the day, and that's an awful lot for me. So I was in a good mood for that. The Techmeister, hey, Alpha 007 org. Hello, Mooch. Do I have any other microphone? I might. Why? Mark Lane, our Arizona advocate. Happy Easter. Happy Easter to you, sir. Hope you're able to spend time with family in between testing. Not in the slightest. Not here in New York. No family is going anywhere. My dad's about a half mile from here, and I UPS'd him a package yesterday, and I don't want him in the stores or anything. And my brother and sister-in-law are about an hour and a half north of the city, in the Hudson Valley, and none of us are seeing. We do the FaceTiming, but nobody's traveling anywhere. Just too dangerous right now. Alpha 007 org, some garbled sound. Okay, how is everybody else picking that up? Um, just to see, because it's really hard to sort. Always assume it's at your end, I think, first. Not because I've got any kind of special setup, but that's just where 99% of the problems happen. Your local streaming would stutter or something like that versus a transmission problem on my end, which can certainly happen, or a YouTube problem, which really doesn't happen too often. Usually it's local, especially with everyone being home and everyone firing up the Sunday night movie about now. Punisher Maximus. Oh, okay. Bubby Blindy, thanks for joining us. Amish Vapor, sound check okay. Sounds good, Mooch. Okay, cool. Thanks, folks. Awesome. So I did the non-buffet because it's burnt, but and I'm knocking everything over now. But I'm digging. I'm still digging since I brought the Minikin V2 back out again. And it's funny when I brought it back out, the touchscreen for the first time ever was giving me huge problems. It was taking me like 40 swipes before I could get the wattage changed. And now it's working just fine again. So I have no idea why I got cranky after a rest and then loosens up. I don't think my finger strokes or anything like that were changing. So that was kind of weird on that. Home Improvement, what's up? Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Justin. Punisher Maximus, graphene might be promising if it's more available than lithium. Well, the graphene, though, doesn't replace any lithium. Graphene is used at the negative portion of the battery instead of the graphite, and it's incredibly expensive. The lithium still gets used or not used, but they could switch over to silicon or a different metal. There are other things out there, aluminum, stuff like that, but the graphene won't replace any lithium. Magazine Art, hey, thank you joining us from Australia. Duncan Yo-Yo, El Uno, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Vaping Trucker. Good evening, dude. Thanks for joining us. All right, we got a few people watching. Let's take if you got any really pressing questions, check them up right now. Say the hellos, and then we'll dive into why the frack can't we get high capacity with a high current rating? And I have visual aids too. I don't know. They're pretty crude, but we'll see. Punisher Maximus, that is some of the best news I've heard in a very long time. Congratulations, sir, and I hope that goes on for another 100 years or whatever amount of time you're due. Excuse me. The pollen today is like 11.4 out of a scale of 12, which means it's insanity. I get up in the morning, my windows are open a 16th of an inch just because it's just, I hate stale air. And you can see the layer of pollen on the windowsill every morning. Every morning. It is insane. I love living next to a huge park, but the maple trees just kill me for 3 months. Luckily, the grass in autumn doesn't bother me in the parks. We should really have more people with everyone stuck at home. No, educational channels aren't popular. Not when I have to go up against Disney. Are you kidding? Or you know, the last Star Wars movie, or what was I watching yesterday? Ha! Obviously a memorable movie. I didn't even remember what it was. Wow, that's bad. I remember not hating it. It was something I was just flipping through channels, something. Tonight, not sure what I'll be watching. Clint Fox, hello, welcome. Montha Kanan, I think you asked before, please. Battery Space Mooch. You don't need a hashtag, don't need an at sign. If you have any questions for me, Battery Space Mooch in the beginning so I can see. And moderators, just repeat that a couple times as we go through, as people start to roll in every 5, 10 minutes or something like that. That way it's a big bright red tag and I see what's a question versus what's just inter-chat banter. Intra-chat banter? Yeah, intra-chat banter. Why Molly cell better than the 40T? Well, it depends which Molly cell, and it depends how you're using them. I like Molly cells because we can get them from authorized vendors, recently manufactured dates, which is important, the genuine cells. We're supporting a company that supports us, or it's a Samsung who has nothing to do with us, and they perform really well. And the P42A performs a little better than the 40T. Amish Vapor, Iowa is not under a complete lockdown. I'm torn. Lockdowns are terrible, but also that prevents the spread. I mean, New York, I was screaming in February for lockdowns, which would have devastated even more people financially. But it's kind of funny. We're at what 700 deaths a day in New York State, a couple hundred in Manhattan, and I was horrified to the point of like my ears tearing up every night when I heard the news. Now I hear 700 died last night. You're like, oh, thank goodness it's not any worse. You just become so immune to such horrifying news. You just get used to it. Oh yeah, 700 people died. Well, that was yesterday and the day before, and it's horrifying, but at least it's not worse. And I hate having reached this stage. I think it should be truly horrifying every night, but at a certain point, you have to kind of block yourself off from it just to function. Because for a couple of weeks there, everybody here in New York City was just like just like beaten down with anxiety and fear and stuff. And now it's like, okay, we're getting a rhythm, we're getting the routines down, and we got to have to do this for months before New York can kind of start getting released from it. So, Justin, how's the traffic compared to normal? What traffic? It's amazing. Some friends of mine, one just said it's usually 2 to 3 hour drive to Newark Airport and back from here in New York City. It's not too far, but the traffic is bad. And it was like a half hour out, half hour back. There's just nothing. Every day seems like 10 o'clock Sunday night, which in Manhattan is really, really quiet because everyone's just, oh, we got to work tomorrow. Okay, no hanging out, no nothing. Maybe we go out for dinner and then everyone's just home Sunday night. Um, David Quillen asks, is the Molly Cell P42A the new meta for 21700? Got to check out my Mining Your Moss episode 31, the video just before this one. You'll see what I think about the Molly cells. They're great cells. They're not the best for every user. That's why there's some, runners ups. Runners ups, that's correct, for 21700s, but I picked it as the best all around. Amish, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad. Well, I'm glad you're working, but I'm sorry to hear that also because it does expose you. Home Improvement lives in Chicago and says downtown is a ghost town. Very strange. Yeah, the parks are still fairly crowded, but mostly it's fairly empty, and no tourists are coming in too. Where that's you go to Times Square and it's I don't know 90% tourists jam, so we don't have that, and the New Yorkers themselves are staying home. You still get packed grocery stores, unfortunately, which is why I spend so much time every day trying to find food for my dad and I. I suffer from limited mobility, and I don't want him anywhere near a store. So it's trying to get those arrangements when everyone else in New York is thinking the same thing and scrambling for the few remaining delivery slots. Monther Caden, why, when we use Ohm's law to calculate continuous discharge, we don't calculate the battery 4.2 volts? I sure do, and I recommend calculating it for using 4.2 volts for mechanical mods. Gives you a little bit more safety margin than what I recommend everyone do. If you have to, you can use 3.7. It gets you a little closer to the actual, but just do it at 4.2. Not that big of a difference. Get that little safety margin in, particularly if you're at very low coil resistances, because just a little bit of inaccuracy in reading can mean a big difference in the amount of current. All right, let's start diving in tonight's topic. Why the frack can we have high capacity with high current rating? And you'll see a little bit in the middle. A 25 amp battery, you can get range of capacities, or you get for a particular capacity, you might get a couple of different current ratings, but overall, the higher the capacity, the lower current rating. And why is that? Because it's frustrating as heck because we want both. We want longer runtime and we want a higher current rating, or most, and pardon me for the hemming and et cetera and so forth, but the pollen, woof, trying to keep it down with water. So I'm going to go a little bit over. Yes, this is a battery. A little bit over what's inside a battery. And the next binding of Moss is I'm gonna do some battery teardowns. So maybe this kind of prep for that. But this is what's inside a battery, and it's going to directly impact why we can't have both. So you've got on the outside, you'll have a layer of plastic material, and that separates the positive negative parts, which is called, amazingly, the separator. And so we've got a layer of that stuff. Then we've got a sheet of copper foil, and on the copper foil is a layer of black goop. And that is the graphite with some other goodies we'll talk about that's smeared on the copper, and it can be on both sides of the copper. And that's the negative part of the battery. Then we've got a sheet separating the positive from negative part. Again, now this sheets of the white plastic, I have paper here, but white plastic, are porous, so the ions can flow between them. Then we've got a sheet of aluminum foil, that's the positive part of the battery, and the battery goop that goes on it. Now what goes on here is a metal oxide, cobalt oxide, or magnesium, nickel, manganese, nickel, and cobalt oxides, or it might be nickel, cobalt, aluminum oxides. Those are different chemistries of the battery. What this black group is on the aluminum. Now, they take these layers, and unfortunately to do this, I am going to have to do it slightly off screen. And they roll it all up. And you've got all these layers, and there might be 30 layers, um, counting through them of this just rolled up. And then this is what gets dropped down into the battery. Excuse me. It's like this. Now, you'll see there's a tab here. This is connected to the copper. This, when you drop it down the tube, they put an electrode down through the middle that gets this, and they spot weld it to the inside bottom of the metal can. So if you look here in the bottom of the can on the inside, this would be spot welded to it. Then this aluminum tab out the top gets spot welded to what's here at the top of the battery on inside of that, the top contact structure. And that becomes your battery. And this is the stuff that takes up room inside the battery. Now, that's really important because when you want high capacity, you have to have more battery goop. You have to have more places to store the ions. That's what determines the capacity, the number of ions you can store inside the battery. If you want higher current handling, you've got to have some other things inside the battery. You have to have more metal. You have to, actually, how to dive into that? Well, let me finish with high capacity. In order to have higher capacity, we need to have more battery goop. So the layers are going to be thicker, or we might roll up more of it, something like that. And that gives us more space for all the ions. Now, in order to have more room for the battery goop, we have to have that metal foil has to be thinner. The plastic separator has to be thinner. The metal tabs, maybe not as wide, not as thick, so it takes up less room when it's folded up. Essentially, we're making room for more of the goop. Now, in order for the goop to work and to stick to the metal, we have to add stuff to the goop, to the positive and negative goop. And I'm sorry to get so technical with the word goop, but the other terms, like the different metal oxides, or even, the worst one is the lithium hexafluorophosphate, which is the salt they put in the electrolyte. Oh, by the way, that roll of stuff is then saturated with the liquid, the electrolyte, that lets the ions go back and forth. But I'll cover that in more detail in the next Rounding Your Miles episode. It wasn't important in terms of capacity versus current rating. But for the goop to stick to the metal, we've got to mix in a binder with the goop. That takes away from some of the capacity. And we also want to have something to make the goop a little more conductive for the ions to find a way into the goop. But that'll come in more with the current handling. So there's all kinds of stuff in there. But essentially, the more goop we have, the more ions we can hold. But the more goop we have, the less room we have for metal foils and all kinds of other stuff to improve the performance of the battery. If we look at the other side, what does it take to get a higher current rating? Well, and I'm going to wrap these two aspects of it together, but I'll deal with, that's how you get higher capacity. How do we get higher current handling? Well, number one, we want the thickest metal foil we can use, because the more metal we have to conduct all that stuff coming out of the goop into the tabs and up to the top and bottom of the battery, the better. That's lower resistance. So we want thick metal foil. We want thick tabs going up to the top and bottom of the battery that we had here, these tabs, and they're usually pretty small. We may want multiple tabs. Some batteries have 2 tabs for the positive. We also want the thinnest layers of goop we can possibly get, because we don't want the ions to have to take time trying to get through the goop. And literally, it takes time to diffuse into the goop. We also want to add conductive additives to the goop, because if you just have a layer of just the goop, let's say we're discharging a battery, so the ions are flowing from the negative side of the battery to the positive into the metal oxide stuff that's laid down on the aluminum. Excuse me. We want a thin layer, and we want the ions to get through really fast, because we've got lots of current. We don't want the ions all bunching up someplace, because that causes voltage sag. We want them to stream in. Well, if you've got just a solid layer of goop, let's say no binders, none of that conductive additive, well, now they have to look for a nook and cranny to settle in, and it takes forever for it to flow to the back. So if I mix in some really conductive carbon in with the goop on both sides, positive and negative goop, Now I've got high conductivity channels for the ions to essentially dig all the way in through the layer and find a nook or cranny in the metal oxide powder particles in there. Now, what all this ends up being are competing requirements. For high current handling, I want a thin layer with lots of conductive additive in it, so I don't have a lot of goop. And I want thick metal foils and thick tabs. And the separator can stay the same. We don't, thicker or thinner, doesn't matter. But that thicker foil, thinner layer of goop, more conductive additives to the goop means I have less goop, active material inside the battery if I want a higher current handling. If I want higher capacity, I want thicker layers of the goop. I want thinner foil. That means higher resistance. A thicker layer of goop means it's harder for the ions to get through. That means higher resistance, lower current handling. And I want to use less conductive additives because that means I can put more of the active material inside the battery. That means I can't handle high current, literally because of the high resistance of the materials, but also because it's really hard for the ions to make it through all that extra goop. So for higher capacity, I'm forcing myself to limit the amount of current that's flowing. For higher current handling, I'm reducing the amount of capacity available in the battery to make room for everything else. And this ends up giving us our competing requirements. For high current handling, I got to take up a lot of room inside the battery with things that don't have capacity, which leaves me with low capacity. If I have really high capacity, I end up with higher internal resistance inside because of the thin foils, and I've got much thicker layers of goop, which means it's just I can't get the ions through quickly. So I end up with lower current handling or current rating. Now, in the middle, we can start to play. We can say, I have a 2500 milliampere hour battery rated at 25 amps or 20 amps. I want to bump that up to 25 amps, but I can't play with the amount of goop and I can't play with the thickness of any layers. So what do? Maybe get a higher efficiency additive. Get a grind the particles smaller in the goop, or buy a higher quality goop or something like that. That lets me change my rating from 20 to 25 amps, but still hold my capacity, 2,500 milliampere hours. I don't have to force it down because I brought up my current handling. But now what have I done by using higher conductivity additives and maybe another grinding step or something for my particles? I've increased the cost of the battery. So now I got to start playing with that. Will the market bear that? But in the end, the basic thing is why can't we have both? It's because we have directly competing requirements for high capacity versus high current handling. Now, the overall trend is we do this, but we do this. As technology makes the batteries better and better, the trade-offs together rise. Now, you compare what we could do with well, we used to be stuck with a 20 amp 2500 MOS cell. Now we can get a 25 amp 2500 MOS cell. If we go to 21700s, which of course it's a bigger cell, those are 18650s I was talking about before. If we go to 21700, well, now we just have plain old more room, and we can do both. We could have, something like the Samsung 40T, a solid 25 amp, 4000 milliampere hour battery, or we can play the not ratings games, but play with capacity versus current handling. We can go up to 5,000 milliampere hour, but we're down to 10, 12 amps or so. Or we can go up to 3,000 milliampere hour, but we're up to 3,000 milliampere hour, but go up to a 35 amp rating with a Samsung 30T. So we can still play that, but we're playing at a higher and higher level as we do the trade-offs, and that I think will not as much with the current handling, but I think the capacities will come up higher and higher for the same current handling. Like I don't think we're going to see a 40 amp battery, round battery, but I think we'll see higher and higher capacities for the current ratings that we have now. And that is tonight's topic for the trade-off between capacity and current handling. And I'm going to grab some water and let's take a look at chat. Dakota Simon, welcome. Nefarian, Tobai, hey, thanks for joining us. Tracy Thompson, how are you? Thanks for joining us. Tracy, you missed most of the techno goop babble, but it's not too much tonight. Well, actually, no. What I jab around for about 10 or 15 minutes. We had a long preamble before we started going into everything. Mike Berg, thank you, sir. Happy Easter to you too. I agree, Justin. That's why the Molly cells are great. They have a great balance of current and capacity, which, to be honest, the Samsung 40T and 30T also have VTC 5A and 5D, but we can get genuine Molly cells with known grades and recent manufacture from authorized distributors being sold from a company who openly embraces selling to the vaping community. Everybody, if you have questions, battery space mooch. No hashtag, no at symbol. You don't need it. Just battery space mooch. Tags it in red. That way I see it. Otherwise, it could be really easy for me to miss your question. And as I'm scrolling down, Iceman, though I caught yours. Iceman, yes, I have tested the. I forgot who bought their because A123 isn't producing the cells. Any A123s out there are very old, but it's Lithium Works, WERKS, purchased the rights to produce using the nanotechnology to produce A123 cells, essentially, and I've reviewed the 18650 and the 26650. Incredible cells. In series in a mech, they're fantastic. Very few regulated devices can use them, but in series for a mech, it's a fantastic choice and the safest chemistry we can use. Stephen Storer, thank you very much. Ruben, thanks for joining us. Brad Palmer, does using a metal mesh change capacity? Um, Inside the battery? Oh, for the foil? I think if we went to a mesh, well, the current handling, the resistance would go up, would skyrocket because you have much, much less metal. So the current handling would probably go way down using mesh instead of metal foil. I don't think, because we couldn't pack anything into the mesh openings, you still have the plastic separators on both sides of the metal mesh, what they call the current collector. Those are the foils because it collects current from the goop, from the positive end, and passes it to the tabs. So I think we would just have, it would just result in a slightly lighter battery that had a lower current handling. I don't think we'd get any extra capacity out of it. Justin is hoping that with technology advancements, maybe we'll see that elusive 3,000 mAh 25 amp. Well, if you go to Asia, there's 3,000 mAh 60 amp cells available now, which is total BS, folks. There's no such thing. There's nothing over 20 amps for 3,000 milliamp hour 18650 available, made anywhere in the world yet. Kyle C. asked, did I see that Kennedy has a stack section for the Vindicator? Yes, it did. What he had, like a 5 or a 6 stacked or something like that? And also the new copper buttons for the Vindicator. I'm going to have to buy one and test here. I haven't checked the price. I'm kind of scared. But because there's just no money here. They haven't worked. There's no day work in months. And now there's probably not going to be for a while longer. But the copper button for the Vindicator, and I can test it with the Vindicator and Ruby here because I haven't done the giveaways for my patrons yet. Tested the all stainless Vindicator, but I'd like to test the copper button on it, and I'll give that away to the patrons, and then test the stainless and copper switch or button assemblies for the Ruby. Justin asks, have you given any more thought to the Mooch mech switch idea? I briefly thought about it, but then I realized there's just too many different threads out there. And I couldn't come up with something universal because there's too many, lengths of the threads, thread pitches, and stuff like that. Diameters can be slightly different, and I just couldn't do a universal mech button. It would have to be for a specific mech, or just do, I'll just design the entire mech. Excuse me. Let's see if I missed anything. Nefarian asked, he knows what a nook is, but what is a cranny? Well, usually they're side by side because they get along really, really well. And everyone's got, I mean, it's obviously, the biggest debate right now in the world. What is a nook versus what is a cranny? I think they're mentioned together, Nook and Cranny, because they're just equal. They get cranky if you favor one over the other, anything like that. So we just say Nook and Cranny. Cranny's already upset enough about being second all the time. I mean, if you talk to Cranny, they'll want Cranny and Nooks, but it just doesn't flow. Nooks and Crannies. You might have to talk to Thomas's English Muffins really about that. I think they're the ones who. That's certainly where I heard it from. David Quillen would buy a Mooch mech. Perhaps someday. Perhaps someday. Yeah, magazine art. That sounds reasonable to me. Michael Henrik says he'd buy that mech unless it's $400. Well, it won't be cheap because it'll probably be low volume. I don't know if it'd be 400. That sounds like a pretty special mech there. Willie W says for a single cell mech, he uses woof. He uses a complicated equation. Okay. I can't go through the math there. I'm already violently against using I for current. Yes, I know. I don't know, all the years of school, electrical engineering in high school, electrical engineering in college, and it was I. For me, that's preposterous to say I. And I'm not, this isn't against you and what you were brought up, but just in general, teaching I and then going, that means amps. And they're like, well, why don't you use A? And I'm like, exactly. So, when I'm going over things, I'll say, amps equals volts over ohms, or A equals V over O or omega or something like that, because it just makes people's heads explode. The equation itself is already confusing the hell out of them. But to have I for current, or, what do they use for voltage now? U and E and other things, depending if you're talking to a physicist or other electricians or something like that. It's insanity for me and for anyone who's learning something. Malayan Man asks, for regulated mod, is it dangerous? I don't have to read any further. Yes, but let's find out what your question is. If my atomizer shorts regularly, yeah, I'm using an old RTA with loose screws. Will it affect my battery? I think it's going to blow up your mod before anything happens to the battery. But if it blows up your device, that could take the battery with it, and then you've got a ruined device that short circuits the battery and causes a fire explosion. So yeah, it's dangerous. If you've got an atomizer is regularly short circuiting, stop using it immediately. I don't care if you have no money to buy another one. Stop. Just stop. Borrow an atomizer from someone else. Buy a used atomizer. If you say it has loose screws or something, well, change screws or something, just loose screws, what the coil sliding out and short circuiting, get another atomizer. Stop using that. This is your safety for something you're putting up to your face. Magazine art. Damn rechargeable AAAs gave out on the wireless keyboard. Yes, I for intensity of the current. Yes, it's just insanity because when you're trying to teach somebody that, we use I for amps, and they're like, wait, it's not C for current or A for amps. It's I for amps. Yes, for intensity. But intensity can be used for anything. Intensity of light, intensity of water flow, intensity of volume. It's not current related in the slightest. So to me, just in terms of teaching, after talking to tens of thousands of vapors over 5 years, 150, 200 questions, well, only maybe 100 questions a day now, I confuses the heck out of people. I hope he builds the mech better than the homemade battery. Oh, I hope so too. But look, VDog, if I get enough copper foil and I roll it up tight enough around a battery and poke the battery out, there's your mech. You crimp the ends, and then I, stick a wire on the top end and you touch the wire to the bottom end. It works. Come on, $400 because it's homemade. And made in America. Brad Palmer, get yourself a small second owner CNC and a few copper billets. Mooch mechs. Then they're $1,000 each because to get that going in a Manhattan apartment, oh yeah. Oh yeah. And copper is not pleasant to machine. Well, compared to aluminum. That always surprised me, how hard copper is and how cranky it is when you're machining it. It's a great recommendation. If I had a home and a garage, if I was living at my brother's house or something, oh, absolutely. That's just because Ampere was a Frenchman. Wired Talk with Big G. Finally got to catch a live show. Welcome, Justin. Maybe Times Vape if you go to China. I'm completely open to China manufacturing. Look what Dapo did with the clutch. Some fantastic machining there. MechLife did a pretty good job with their arcless. Uh, I have nothing against a China-made mech if it is a step above in manufacturing quality. Black Plague. I'm Arrow and I is still amps to me. It's still used a lot. Tobias Ripper. Hello. Is the lithium in the cells stacked alternated to avoid dendrites? Solid-state electrolyte would allow large amount of lithium and better performance. Is the lithium in the cells, quote, stacked alternated to avoid dendrites? Well, the lithium is in the electrolyte as a lithium salt, and the lithium is as ions um, that is forms that finds nooks and crannies in the metal oxide powder and the graphite powders in the positive and negative end, respectively, of the battery. Um, Depending on the particles that you use, yes, the lithium ions will stack up in layers, but I'm not sure what you mean by stacked alternate. The dendrites form when you're either overcharging, and that sets up an electrochemical state that results in the lithium plating plating on the parts of the batteries it's not supposed to. It's supposed to finding all the nooks and crannies. It ends up just smacking up against something and sticking there. Or if the current levels are much, much too high, the lithium actually bunches up at the surface of the goop because it can't find its way through because so much current coming through, and now it will start to stack up or plate onto areas, and that starts to build up and can eventually poke a hole through the plastic separator between the sides, and short circuit. So that's where the dendrites come from, not necessarily how they're forming up or how they're stacked within the positive or negative goop, as I understand it. Justin Vickers, there you go, Dowpo. I'm open to talking to lots of people. And believe me, there are things being talked about. This is not something that I'm completely ignoring. It's just, I have nothing to say, publicly yet. But this kind of process that can go on forever. And hey, people are just starting to come back online. Well, in other parts of the world, and New York is just, we got months to go. Unicorn Vert is made in China. Unicorn Vert. I'm hearing about that, but I haven't seen anything about it really. I haven't watched any of the reviews yet. Um, Tobias Ripper, not enough characters to explain better. Yes, I meant layered, but you answered perfectly. Okay, good. Good. I'm glad I was able to answer that. Ariel Casillas. 1860, 18650 LG HG2 or Home Tech Life HG2 on Tesla Nano 120. Yeah, the HG2, a good performer up to 45 watts each. If that is a two battery mod, I'm guessing 120 watts. I don't know. Then 90 watts for the HG2. But I'd say the 30Q, Samsung 30Q, the Sony VTC6 over the HG2. There's so many fake HG2s, and the 30Qs and VTC6s performed a touch better than the HG2. It depends what country you're in too, and what availability you have. But HG2s are, boy, is that not pirated, faked a lot, counterfeited. The home tech, there's nothing wrong with home life cells. It's just that I like performance of the other ones, known performance. Some people are already looking for stack sections for the Vert mech mod. I'll have to check that out. Wired Talker Big G, thank you for your kind words. Thank you for joining us too. I don't have any funds for a mech or a mod, period, but hopefully soon. And we're at about 18 minutes to go. And Alex Davila says there is a stack section for the Vert coming out, allegedly, which sounds like it would be a wonderful thing. Yeah, I was playing around with a stacked stacked mech life arcless. Um, and I've got Axial Pro with the series deck, which I'll probably be using in regulated mods. Mass Mods, Amadeus Builds, Instagram. Thank you, by the way. Huge shout out to them for sending one over for me to play with. I haven't had a chance yet. It's finding the time, just the hours spent every week just trying to make sure that the family's set up with supplies and everything else. Um, wow. Finally, after a month, got food delivery to my dad. He's been going off just with that stuff or heading out to the stores, which is what I don't want him to do. Why talk with Big G? Mooch, the vert has come down in price. Only reason I got one because megs are usually a bit rich for my blood. Okay. Home Improvement has the TS triple parallel. I like the performance on that of the DS and the TS, but the maintenance. Holy cow, stripping that thing down all the way and the maintenance, that was brutal. There's so much work on that to get to the contacts and everything. Asked how much percent comes off the top of the amp load again? Oh, for triple and parallel, there's no numbers for it. It's really how, I mean, that's a well-designed mod. So I don't know, take 15% off of, some people take 15% off of each cell. Some people take 15% off the total. It's really up to you how hard you're using them. I have really no numbers for guidance because it's all over the place. A lot of people just go, oh, just take half. If I've got three 20 amp batteries, that's 60 amps, I'll run them at 30 amps and they'll last forever. It's really, you know, uh, you might say, okay, 320 amp batteries in parallel, 60 amps, I'll run it at 50. Because you're not a chain vapor, you're not that worried about overall battery life or battery sag. Someone else may go, oh, hell no, I'm going to run it at 30 maximum because I want these things to last 5 years and I don't want to deal with any battery sag. So a lot of it's your preferences too, as to how far you want to go in terms of chopping it. Sorry, there's just no hard and fast numbers. I know everyone hates that. Everyone just wants, and it makes me insane because everyone just wants good, bad, yes, no, safe, unsafe. And there's nothing about batteries you can do that with. It's so much of it's around your priorities and your preferences. Um, I tried to, in some cases, just go, look, this one's the best. And they buy it and they go, hey, yeah, but Mooch, but I did some research 6 months later and this one's actually better. And I'm like, yes, for that particular circumstance, but you didn't want to talk to me about your particular circumstance. You just wanted me to tell you best. And I gave you the best overall one. It matters, but no one wants to hear that. No one wants the details. No one wants to know, oh, but it depends on this, depends on that. Okay, stop my rant. Home Improvement has three Samsung 20Ss. Oh, wow. Okay, so maybe, you've got a 60 amp. But, if you say, okay, I'm going to take that 90 amp triple Samsung 20S rating, bring it down to 60 amps, But now, do you have an RDA that can handle that? Can the mod handle 60 amps without huge heating? What about the arcing at the contacts with 60 amps? How much more maintenance are you going to have to do? How much destruction of the contact surface is going to happen if you run it at 60 amps? So you start to take that into account too. Michael, don't. I bought an LG HB4. It's a 30 amp battery. Yes. What is a safe charge rate for the cell? I don't remember what that's rated for. I'm sure you can do 1 amp without any problems. Check the description section of this video for the link to my blog at ECF. There you will find my battery charge rates table. All the ones from the big manufacturers, I have the charging rates from the datasheet, the standard and fast charge rate. It's probably something like 1.5 or 2 amps for standard, and then maybe 4 amps. Oh, actually, it's an older technology. Maybe it's not 4 amps. Maybe it's only 3 amps. See, I don't remember. But you can't go wrong with, well, you could go wrong with 1 amp. It depends on your charger, et cetera, and so forth. But 1 amp is probably perfectly safe, but I'd say check the charge rates table. Wired Talker Big G likes the Molicel P26 to P26A or P28As. Good all-around cells. Really good all-around cells. Desmond, Alofo, glad to see you're okay, Battery Mooch. I'm doing okay. Amazingly, I had more problems. I think maybe I had to get used to it. I'm having actually got the same problems or less with the pollen being at 11.4 out of 12 versus the pollen at 7.7 2 weeks ago. And I think I'm getting a little used to it. Also, I have less anxiety. just getting used to the horrifying situation we have here in New York. Unfortunately, I'm getting used to it. And I think with the stress and anxiety coming down, maybe my reaction to the pollen is coming down also. Certainly feel like I have more energy, so I'm definitely getting used to the pollen. I have Allegra and I can take that, but it just messes me up after a couple of days. It's just this weird sensation, even though it works really well at blocking the pollen. My reaction, my allergies to the pollen. The what's it, maple tree pollen this time of year. Rajan Sagu likes the tenacious unicorn. It's a good alternative if you can't find the vert. TMS 420 asks, I just got an XR charger with a USB cord to replace its direct plug-in one. Can I use a power plug with that, or should I just plug into my PC? So I think you're asking when you say power plug, you mean a USB charging adapter, the cube or the block? Well, if you plug it into the PC, you're limited to 1/2 an amp. That's all you can deliver for most PCs, unless it's a USB-C PD USB port. But a standard Type A, the big rectangle, most of those are limited to 1/2 an amp, and that'll be the maximum charge rate you'll be able to do on your charger. If you got 4 batteries in there, you're going to be doing each one 1/8 of an amp or something like that. I recommend, especially since you never know. These, I don't want to put down XR chargers. I think they're great, but if I have $1,000 laptop and a $20 charger, I don't like that. If I have a $10 USB charging adapter and a $20 charger, that's a matchup I like. And you can get a 2 amp USB charging adapter, pretty cheap, a good one, an Anchor or something, for a good price, and be able to have 2 amps going into your charger to be able to use in the charger how you see fit, 2 times 1 amp or 1 to 2 amps, whatever the charger is capable of doing. So yes, you can use your PC or laptop, but I recommend not, because if the charger does anything to the connector, it could take out your laptop or your PC. Excuse me. Willie W uses the Vapour's Cloud Stormbreaker mech with 3 Samsung 30Ts in parallel. Arcing is not bad, 105 amps. Excellent. I don't think you're drawing 105 amps though. That's essentially a 0.01 ohm coil or something. Justin says if you have a good 2 amp phone brick, that is better, like a Samsung if you have it. There you go. Yeah, I mean, Anchor, Samsung, Apple, I use, the ones that my iPad and my iPhone. I use those, and then I have an Anchor 65-watt USB-C PD that'll charge anything on the planet. And, it's just a nice flat little deck of cards thing. Fantastic unit. Love the interface, love the look, and it just charges anything that it's ever been hooked up to. Everyone's talking about something that Nefarian was talking about. Oh, is this the unicorn? Hawke, that's the other name in RAV Power. Thank you very much, Justin. Hawke is the other one. Yeah, I went looking at Hawke. I think RAV Power looked at and Anchor. And I think for what I was looking for, to be able to test out devices that will have USB-C mods with USB-C ports, I was looking at for some reason something about the combination of ports. I think it was the 45-watt port and the 15-watt port. But now you get the gallium nitride, the GaN technology coming in where you can get 100 watts of power in about the same size, but mega dollars. I'm not spending $100 on a 100-watt charger, but I'll eventually get one. Maybe, for Christmas or something, they'll be down to a reasonable price, $50, $60 for USB-C PD 100-watt charger to be able to go 5 amps at 20 volts into something, whatever it is. Probably laptops mostly, but who knows? Maybe they'll have a mod that can do that. Like the Sigelli. Oh boy, which one is Sigelli with that 4.5 amp charging? I already forgot, but that one. Willie W, a 0.03 is roughly 105 amps. At what voltage, Willie? What voltage are you using? I don't have a calculator with me here. To get 0.03 to 105 amps, you can't use at 105 amps, you're probably down at around zero point 0.7 volts, 0.6 volts. So 0.03, I don't think it's giving you what you think it's giving you. Um, That's the thing. You got to take voltage sag into account. If you've got a 0.03 coil, you're dragging the voltage down, you know, maybe 2 volts, but it may be a lot lower than that. And then you got to recalculate your current. It's an iterative process. It could take 3 or 4 calculations. You drop down 2 volts and you do 2 volts divided by 0.03. Then you get a new current value, and now you kind of find out where you're floating. Joe Ryan, any thoughts on PS4 controller batteries? Some people upgrade the 1,000 mAh battery, 2,000 mAh, don't seem to have problems. Don't know anything about the batteries, the size, the current requirements, which are probably low. I'd say check out YouTube videos from people you trust in terms of the safety and the possibilities for it, and see what luck they've had. But I think for a lot of things, you can upgrade the batteries on it if you're willing to take the risk. Thank you. The Snow Wolf Zephyr, Justin, yes, for the Sigelli with 4.5 amp charging. Magazine art, thank you. 1.77 volts into 0.03 is about 59 amps. Okay, yeah, it's 60 amps though. Your voltage will come back up a little bit with a good cell. With 30T, you'll probably be at around, you're back up to 3.3, 3.2 volts. So, you probably get with a 0.03 coil, yeah, you probably get like 60 amps out of a battery or something like that. Yeah, magazine art, 4.2 volts with a 0.03 coil, 140 amps. Yeah, except that that's a short circuit and the battery will stay at 4.2 volts for about half a millisecond and then dive way down. Michael Dant asks or says, I have an iQuos 3. Wow. I was looking at buy those and holy cow, just to open up and see what's inside till I found it was what, $200-$300? You have to charge the holder after each use. I smoked 20, 25 times a day with it for 2 years. That's over 16,000 charge cycles. How is this possible? You're not emptying it all the way. What they're doing is you're not taking that battery down to 2.5 volts, and they may not even charge up to 4.2 volts, and you're not draining it even down to its point. So you may be taking it just a quarter of a cycle each time, maybe less if they're doing it properly. And from that, you can get a huge increase in cycle life. The cycle is not for each use. It's only from 4.2 volts down to 2.5 volts and back up to 4.2 volts. That's one cycle. If you go from like 4.0 to 3.5, that could be a quarter or an eighth of a cycle or something like that. And so that you're just doing like this instead of this, and that can get you the huge number in charge cycles versus actually cycling the battery fully. Roy Godin, Godin, welcome. Thank you. Not thank you. That was someone else saying thank you to, and I mushed them together. Hello. We've got 4 or 5 minutes. Any last questions? Get in. Stomach is growling like crazy. Thanks, Roy, for letting me know. We may be pretty close. I don't think I missed anything. If someone didn't have a battery Mooch in front. Ruben, yeah, and a couple minutes early just to let everyone run to the bathroom or whatever they want to do to go over to Vape and Fagan's channel to watch the incredible Not Another Vape Show, chock full of just a plethora of topics. And tell them Mooch sent you to, and I'll be in chat for that. Well, I'll be cooking dinner, but I'll be listening, and maybe I'll drop in a chat. The ferry and get some food and stay safe. Thank you. Same to you. Michael, I'm in Canada. We've had the iQuos here for 3 years. Wow. Have they approved that for sale in the United States yet? United States? Did we get that earlier? What was it, later last year or earlier this year for the iQuos? Or is that still a no-no for the States? I remember I was looking at vendors in Europe when I was looking at it. Thank you, Justin. Yeah, ask Vape and Fagan, to explain the electrochemistry for the lithium hexafluorophosphate salt in lithium-ion electrolyte. He's an expert on that, and much better than me. He's the one who taught me what I know, so he's the one who can talk about that. Home improvement. You're in Chicago. Okay. Ruben had spaghetti today with fried chicken. Oh, that sounds good. I've got the grilled chicken breast. I think I've got the Moroccan spiced. Uh, what do you have? Millet? I think I had millet. Just I went cheap today, and then I think I've got what were the veggies? I think I'll do sautéed asparagus, maybe with that. I gotta take a look at what's sitting around. I'm not in the mood to spend a lot of time cooking. I'm too hungry. I just want to munch, and then probably a big bag of Doritos while I'm munching, while I'm cooking. Excuse me. Haven't heard anything at IQOS. Alex Davila reminds us to make sure to let Navs know, not another vape show, if you're cut or not. Well, yeah, because that's priority for not another vape show. Ruben is in Queens, so you are okay. I'm waving to you back that way. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, you're back that way, or maybe a little bit over, kind of diagonally over my shoulder. Hassam, welcome. iQuotes is being sold in Atlanta, but I'm not sure if it's been released in other markets yet. Battery Mooch. I guess if it's in Atlanta, then at least nationally, it's legal, and it's just who's buying it to have available for purchase. I really wanted to see what was inside there because they've got an interesting system. It looks Lux. I want to see is the build internally Lux in terms of the battery and assembly quality and stuff like that. Namely, is it worth the price? Whoa, they just went live. Okay, they're doing this stuff early. We're out of questions. Let's call it a night, folks. Head over to Vaping Fade channel, None Other Vape Show. They started 2 minutes early last week. They're starting, what, 3 minutes early this week? Eh, gives me a chance to eat 3 minutes earlier. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Stay safe, stay sane, and I'll see everybody next week. Thanks a lot for joining us. Take care.